I originally came from Texas. I went through a divorce, went through truck driving school so I could, support myself. I met my husband in truck driving school. That was in Iowa. I went home to my mother in Iowa. That's where I was born at. My husband lived up here and offered me his home and his life and out in the country, and I love it.
I was born in a Navy base in Norfolk, Virginia. My dad was in the Navy at the time. I grew up actually down in mid-Michigan on a farm. We had a small hog farm. I think at one point we farmed about 80 acres and had about 100 pigs that we raised. Pigs, and we had some chickens.
I always wanted to be a truck driver when I was little. I come from a family that was of truck driving. My dad owned and drove. My mom has owned and drove way back in the day before women ever got into trucking. It was something I always wanted to do, and my dad always told me I wasn't big enough. Just a skinny teenage girl, you're not big enough. Well, as I got older, I got a little wider and then went to him and asked him if I was big enough.
I started driving back in the 80s on a farm. I used to drive a small six-wheeler with all the equipment, and I never really got my driver's license till I started mechanic working on them, and I was required to test drive them. Well, the company I was working for at that time paid me and paid for my CDL for me to go get my CDL, and that's when I got it. It was back then when I was a mechanic. I worked in a factory. I painted. I'm a ASE master heavy-duty truck mechanic. I did that for many, many years. Worked for General Motors for about 10 years inside a factory when I discovered that me working inside a factory was not for me. So I left that and decided it was time for me to go into trucking, and that's where I went into trucking and stayed there.
For the most, I get respect even from the men drivers, And then you get other ones that say, she chose this career, she can do it on her own. But for the majority, I get a lot of help. When I was running solo, whether it be slide my tandems on my trailer to get my weight right, questions that I needed to ask, they were good enough to answer them and help me out. We have a lot more women in trucking now. When I got into it, there was very few. To this day, I still have people come to my truck, wow, I can't believe it's a girl that just backed that up. A girl driving, they're really amazed to see the women doing the men's job.
2006, I went back into trucking. I still had my CDL, but the company I went to work for required me to go to a refresher course, and that's where I met my wife, Nadine.
He was in school for 3 weeks. I had to do the 4-week school in Burlington, Iowa.
We hit it off, and we've been pretty much together ever since. It was kind of interesting. I mean, she's born in Iowa and from Texas, and I actually lived in Texas a long time ago.
He bought me some roses for Valentine's Day one day. It's like 3 days before Valentine's Day. How he knew he was going to see me on Valentine's Day amazed me. We met up in Ohio, I believe it was, Ohio, on Valentine's Day, and he came with a dozen of roses. And he said he had been carrying that around in his truck for like 3 days. His company was from the Midwest, and my company was out of Nebraska. It was just amazing how we was meant to be.
That's what I'm kind of wondering, if it was a coincidence or it was meant to be. And I mean, we've been together since pretty much 2006.
Having a truck is like having another home. There's been times where I've had company. I'll give them my bed, and I still sleep in my truck in my front yard. That's home to me. So it doesn't matter if I have to go someplace and still sleep in my truck.
We enjoyed driving together. It's really nice when we're out there driving because, we're together.
We very rarely argue. We may have disagreements that we can't come to a conclusion, so we just let it lay in the truck and roll over it with a semi. When we got together, he wanted a team, and I said, well, we'll see. We'll do it for 6 months. If you can live with somebody in a small box for 6 months, then you guys can make it.
Go. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Let's go trekking. Let's go trekking.
Challenge is it's a small area that you have to work with. If you get in an argument, there's nowhere to go. You really learn to work together.
Sometimes all you're doing is seeing each other as you pass the bunk. One's got to go to bed and the other, so you still have those 8 to 11 hours that you're by yourself. But when you need somebody to talk to, you've always got your partner there. Now this is going to be bumpy, just for a minute.
She's actually a lot better at backing than I am, I'll be honest. She's always been better at backing.
The best part of it is he always wakes me up with a cup of coffee. It's awesome. When it's cold and snowy or rainy, I don't have to get out for the coffee.
Sometimes we'll do, it's like, well, I did 11 hours today, 600 miles, see if you can beat that. So, you know, we do that.
When you drive and you're gone away from home for a period of time, you have to come home and get your home ready for the next season, or, you know, just whatever you haven't been able to do while you're there. And you only have a short period of time because you got to get back out. I'm trying to get my degree. It's a real struggle, trying to hold family, a job, especially one as trucking. You have to make time to study, and you have to get sleep. My grades are very nicely up there, so hopefully one day I can graduate.
Besides the trucking, I still love to go out in the garage and work on things. I have an old Harley Davidson that I like to ride, and I have a old Freightliner cab over that I've been working on. My brother had this, and he has a salvage yard down in Mid-Michigan, which he specializes in older trucks and equipment. And when he got this in, I kind of fell in love with it, and I told him I really wanted it. And then about a year and a half, 2 years later, he called me and he wanted to know if I wanted this truck, and I told him I did. And he said he needed a snowmobile, so I traded him a snowmobile for this truck. All my neighbors seem to know that when they have a problem with their car, when they see me home, they stop by and, hey, can you look at this? And I still work on vehicles and stuff on the side, motorcycles, snowmobiles, it doesn't matter. I pretty much worked on everything. I get to working on a project, or I get to working on a problem. It makes me forget about everything else I have going on, and I can just get into it, just concentrate on what I'm doing.
Uh-oh. I let you out, honey, in just a second.
I like living out here in the woods because I can do things out here which you can't do in town. In the morning or in the evening, you look out in the front yard and we've got deer out there grazing in our lawn, which I don't really appreciate the deer eating my lawn, but, you know, it's nice seeing the animals.
Outside of trucking, I love to come home and I love to go camping. Every year we go to a Faster Horses concert, which is at the Michigan Speedway. Several artists are there. It's a 3-day adventure. It's a lot of fun. Trucking enables me to get around to see my grandchildren. I have a lot of grandchildren that are scattered across the United States.
What I love about driving is I get to see different parts of this country. I love history. I get to go down and see different sites. I love going out west. Glacier National Forest, I've finally first seen that. That is absolutely beautiful. There's so much here to see. And I still haven't seen it all. And I probably, when I retire, I'm probably going to hook onto my camper and finish seeing the rest of it.